Di da di da di da 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 dum. Doodle doodle doo 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 doo. Hey! Hello, everybody, and welcome to Roll Insight, the show where I, your humble GM, Joshua MacGregor, talk a little bit about the most recent episode of Hidden Realms God Heist, in this case, episode 10, and give you a little background into what went into the making of that, and and kind of what my prep is looking like for episode 11. So welcome. It's lovely that you watch this series. I know you have a lot of YouTube stuff and various shows and books and media to ingest. And so if you are watching this, cheers. It's nice to be nice to to be chosen. All right. Let's get our gimmick out of the way. So we'll roll a d20 to see what your insight is going to be for this episode, and it's a 6. So yeah, pretty mediocre insight that you're gonna get from this episode. No, but I don't actually follow that. It's a stupid gimmick, and I kind of I'm starting to take a perverse pleasure in doing it, because at first I was like, gimmicks are terrible, and now I'm like, it's kind of stupid, but I like it. In any case, we're talking about episode 10. So obviously, big spoilers for episodes 1 through 10. And if you are one of my players in God Heist, I am going to be talking about the kind of prep that I am doing for episode 11. So you can't be here. You must leave. It is vitally important that you not see this episode. And potentially, unless you get my say so, don't watch this at all ever until a couple episodes have passed. Anyway, let's talk. So, let's move this a little bit easier to see. Episode 10 felt pretty good. What tends to happen in D&D is you have really big climactic moments, and then there's quite a bit of downtime and recovery, and downtime and recovery and story and character stuff that happens while you prepare for the next big thing. And that is definitely the case here. I think episode 8 was such an enormous climactic moment. The fallout from that has been 2 episodes long. Where episode 9 was very much, we have new characters to introduce, and we've got to get everybody to the same place. This episode is a little bit more moving forward, so now this is very much more actively build the relationships up, make sure everybody knows that all the PCs are trustworthy to one another. Ulden, especially since I think this shouldn't bleed into the game, but it does inevitably, because people, is Mark was playing Alusvain until now, and Alusvain went full evil and fully betrayed the party, which I still think is such a cool move on Mark's part to do that. And what was I gonna say? Oh, right. And so now he's playing Ulden, and we did talk, like all of us on our group chat did talk, that Ulden is not an evil character. He's still chaotic, but he's chaotic good instead of chaotic evil. And even so, introducing him as an ex-member rather of the Grey Orthodoxy still means there's quite a bit of suspicion on that character. The fact that he knows Alistair, the fact that he is so adamant about trying to save not only the life but the reputation of his friend Arawa, who is the person who founded the Orthodoxy, that he's helping people with his featherfall and his gravitation magic and stuff like that. All of that counts towards cementing him as a vital member of the party for this season. And the fact also that by the end, when they were planning what they were going to do next, what they're going to do in episode 11, he was able to say, look, I'm part of this organization. I can go in and sneak around and talk to people. Opens up so many avenues that have been closed to the party up until this point. There's been very little to no chance of infiltrating the enemy until now. All of that combines. It seems like whenever a player character dies, with the exception, of course, of Thano and Morgan, who stepped away from the show, whenever a player character dies and comes back with a new PC, that PC seems to open up a lot of avenues for the story. I mean, Rhyodon is an extreme version of that thing because Antonio deciding to go with Rhyodon as his character has opened a lot of Sygalian lore. Has brought a lot of Sygalian lore into the show that wasn't really going to be introduced this season with the original party composition. All this stuff about the Accord is kind of spoilerific, but that kind of stuff was going to, obviously it's part of the world and it's part of the world building that I've done, and was going to be a significant part of the overarching story no matter what. But there is a lot of context that is gotten by people knowing what the Accord is before things happen, that things were going to happen that would be mysterious in why they're happening and what the origins of them are. And this tree that they talked to in episode 10 was definitely going to be a gateway to a lot of information no matter what. The way they were going to get that information is different. I'll talk a little bit about that as well, because this was originally going to be combat, but it didn't go that way. So, Rhydon and his connection to the Accord, which becomes established, and the fact that he's now sort of representative of this entire world. He's still king of Garandia, but the responsibilities that have been thrust upon him with this pact with the Accord, pact warlocks are really cool, and the fact that he wanted to go warlock is really cool, because unlike this kind of faith that clerics have, where having belief is enough to use magic. And we'll talk a little bit about this with Balisfane as well. But with pact magic, the understanding the Accord has with Rhydon is that he will represent Sygalia when it comes to Sygalian versus the rest of the universe threats. And if Rhydon becomes too embroiled in Garandia over the rest of the world, like if he were to launch a campaign of Garandia against, for example, the High Elves, I don't have any plans for that to happen. He seems to be getting along well with the prince and heir to Prince, but you know what I mean. He is Prince technically, Aegeus Rothanel. Let's pretend that were to happen, and he would be like wiping out High Elves. The Accord would be like, dude, that's like wiping out one of the kingdoms would void the Accord, and that magic would no longer exist, and the world would be thrown back into chaos. So that's a huge spoiler that I just put. Eventually, that will be explained to the players. So if you are watching this, you have that's a natural 20 insight right there. That's a mistake. I should not have said that. Anyway, now, the Accord is a compact, and there are specific clauses in it that will become more and more apparent. So Yeah, the Accord is happy when they're on Volpikar for him to use power, but that's not always going to be the case. And Puddles, love Puddles. Puddles is a great character. Um, I love that they called him Puddles. Jeez. Um, yeah, Puddles is definitely manifested from the magic of the Accord. Um, so there's a lot you saw in episode 10, the rolling of the D100s. Um, Part of that, if they roll especially low or especially high, affects what he wants to do in communication with Sygalia and that kind of thing. So on like a 9, he wasn't able to contact somebody, and on something in the 80s, he was able to contact Coralon, the god of the elves. Um, so that is an element of it, but there is more to it, and it has me grinning and giggling, uh, waiting to see what happens. Because it can get that sword. That sword is a weird sword. I'm excited. Um, awesome possum. So, uh, yeah. So Rhyodon opens up a lot of lore about Sygalia, which is huge. Um, and brings in the idea. I know that he and Watson are the two sort of leaders of their people who are trying to get armies into Volpikar for their own reasons. And so, it has been floated by players. Might have been off the air, but they have floated the possibility that these two armies come through, and suddenly the Volpikarians get why again. The Volpikarians don't have the numbers to deal with armies from Sygalia. That was established back in episode 3, I think. So suddenly the conflict becomes between the orcs and between the Garendians, which would be insane if that's the direction that the show went. But that's not up to me. That they are leaders of their people. Champion of Grumsh has a spot of special significance. He's not ever been a leader of the Orcish people up until this point, but Grumsh will send people over there who are generals who will lead the armies, and they will defer to Whatsit to know what to do in this alien world. So, and of course, Rhydon, second in line. He's first in line to the throne, but his sister is the one who's on the throne. So she will listen to he's the military commander of Garendia, so she will listen to what he has to say in terms of what's going on there. Regan of Thronos had a very brief role in episode 1, if you'll remember, where she was kind of amazed at how this hodgepodge group of heroes that the gods had gotten together as their champions to send over. And this is something that we're definitely going to talk about more when we're going to do one of these post season 1 with everybody. And that will be really fascinating. That one's going to be something to watch for sure. But we'll talk about all of this. We'll go through it episode by episode. I'm sure we'll jump around. But it's been pointed out by Tolton a lot that they didn't have a choice in going to Volpikar. And this is true. They did not have a choice. And it has been pointed out by NPCs that they are not a team. They are, they were kind of just thrown into this situation together. People of different alignments, different temperaments, different worldviews, different goals, and just kind of thrown over there and said, here, get the job done, basically. And it's worth addressing the logic of the world that went into that. Because there are some things that are inherent, right? There are some things that are, if you don't born into the setting, it's there things that aren't needing to be explicitly said, like you do what gods tell you to do, is sort of a thing of the world. Is like if a god tells you this is what you do now, the consequences for not doing what they say are often excruciating and bad. Um, the other thing is, uh, in terms of being part of the world, it's not only a god; it's also um, it's a bunch of them. It's like all of these gods got together and put a team together, and so there's a and all of these high wizards and high clerics, uh, creating the gateway to send them to Volpikar to deal with the situation is a really big deal. And so there's a certain amount of gravity to the situation because of that. Tolton has a chip on his shoulder for his own reasons, and so doesn't necessarily truck with the gods, which makes a lot of sense for his character. And I think Jim is very good at breaking down what his characters would think and why, based on their motivations and things. And I just like, let's do a little shout out to Tolton, how wonderful a character Tolton is. Like what a kind soul who keeps taking care of people who are grieving. And it's so lovely to have a dark story where there's a character who's like, I am going to make sure that people have keepsakes. And so that's a really big shout out to James Wilson, who plays Tolton Sparktek, because I don't know that gets shouted out enough, how sweet that is. Right, but the more explicit thing about sending people over to Volpikar that you have to remember is that it worked. It technically hasn't worked yet, but 10 episodes in, I don't have the timeline in the off the top of my head, but I can work it out for you right now. So they come, and it's 2 days before they get out of Wardell-Kar, and then it's 2 days to Balmoral, 1 day to Skarsgård. It's 2 days to Necropolis, and then 2 days to the Forest of Wim, and then it's the day after. So it's a week and a half. It's 10 days, 10 episodes, 10 days. It's 10 days into the foray of the 6 original heroes onto Volpikar. And in that time, they have acquired the artifact that they need in order to free Pelor, and they have acquired from this mother tree a set of a runic spell essentially, that will allow the armies of Sygalia to bypass the barrier around Volpikar and invade that world, which was they couldn't get people through. That was the main problem, right? So it's a risk to send people, but at the same time, the gods made that risk knowing that they were sending some of the most impressive champions and specialists of Sygalia through to this world. And in terms of game mechanics, that doesn't quite hold up as much. In terms of game mechanics, they should be sending through level 18 heroes and what have you, and those people do exist, obviously, in the world of Sygalia. But if you look at the rate at which they have grown by 4 levels over the course of 10 days. These people are extraordinary. They are extraordinary and have And they have incredible skill and have made incredible connections and done incredible things. And so, if you're a very powerful being like one of the gods of Sygalia, and you're putting together a strike team, and you've got all these people with very powerful potential who who you're sending through, um, you know, you, you know, it as a calculated risk, a lot has happened that has gone according to that risk. They've done a very good job at fulfilling the expectations of those gods. And of course, there's the flip side of this, which is that the gods, sorry, that the party has suffered losses. They absolutely have. They lost the surgeon because of this really hard thing to really hard and easy thing to DM, which is because of choices, because of the way the world is structured. As they become more and more used to the world, these things start to fall into place more. Right at the beginning, there's a lot being thrown at them, and a tiefling in this world, there's no way the gods would know this. The tieflings in this world are associated with Darafel and Darafel's army, and they get executed when they're found out. So the surgeon goes. They lose Alisfane because Alisfane flips sides and this is true, is that the evil gods are working with the good gods and the neutral gods. All of them are working together to solve this problem because of the implications for the Accord and the nature of their own existence, which is starting to become clearer to the party and will definitely be explored more going forward. This is a huge part of what this campaign is about. Are these gods? And again, this is something that wasn't going to be really talked about until later in season 1, and definitely more in season 2. But it's getting talked about more now, which is absolutely great. I love sharing the story that I've come up with. Is that the gods are working together for a common goal, and Alisfane picked up on that and saw it as a betrayal of the evil that he subscribed to, which it was. It was a betrayal of that. And so he has now abandoned Leviatar and become a very powerful servant of Darafel, this darkness god who's trapped in Ward Eldaro, next to, well, that Arawa is keeping trapped Ward Eldaro on Vulpikar. So there's that. And then they also lose Thano in order to get the artifact to free Pelor. So they've lost half to death. I mean, Nin's character Nezumi stepped away for her own reasons. In character reasons, she's looking after orphans. She's being badass, being Mama Rat, or Rat Mama, being the Rat Mama. So they've lost to death half of the original people sent through, and the people who are left, those two who are left, Whatsit and Tolton, are so strong compared to when they first came through. Whatsit is an incredible tank cleric who can do quite a lot of damage and is very difficult to lay damage on. And Tolton deals so much damage. This was it's been a while since we've been in combat, I think. But it's really worth noting that Tolton was just icing enemies during that fight in Gricklink's Maze in episode 8. Tolton and it should also be mentioned Tolton was putting up a pretty good fight against Hera and her coterie back in episode 3. So Tolton is very strong. What's it is very strong. That's not to say the new player characters are not. They very much are. Ryoton has all kinds of abilities now. Asai is a druid, enough said, and Ulden hasn't yet shown what Ulden is. We haven't seen what Ulden is capable of yet. And I haven't seen what Ulden's capable of yet, but I'm fascinated to find out exactly what a graviturgist can do. So that's very cool. We've rambled on quite a lot about the logic behind the gods of Sygalia, but this is something that I think should be talked about. It's, you know, yeah. Also, level 3 characters fly further under the radar than level 18 characters do, just naturally. You know what I mean? So, that's what I will talk a little bit about the logic of that initial choice, because it is odd, but it does, again, you take in the long view, it does make sense to a degree. All of your very high level people who went during the initial talks didn't do so well. Most of them died. The few who are left are scattered. The ones who were left were Rhyodon, Athronus, Aegeus Rothanel, Lacarian the Druid, and Sobato the Dragonborn. Let's talk a bit about Sobato. Sobato. I'm going to get it switched around in my head anyway. This guy started as sort of a gimmicky character. I wanted somebody to have been captured by the Orthodoxy who wasn't part of the party. And then, yes, episode 5, it was pointed out that I did forget to add him to the combat and made the excuse that he made a very stealthy roll. But sometimes these things are happy coincidences. The recovery from mistakes can lead to characters who are a lot more interesting than when you originally planned them. And Sobato is a fantastic example of a character who I made a mistake when I was running him. He was a bit of a gimmick that he couldn't speak and he couldn't say anything about who he was, to give me time to come up with something, basically. And what has ended up happening is I have a much more three-dimensional character than I've shown, actually, with Sobato. There's more to this guy than meets the eye, and it's led, and it ties in really interestingly with the lore of Care, which is the lore of one of the kingdoms of Sygalia again. So there's a lot of world building baked into this character who's now representative of his people, not a prince or anything, but definitely an observer is the way that he described himself. So there's more to Sobato to be learned for sure. And anybody who's wondering, no, I didn't forget about Sobato. He in terms of coming down to the ground and watching what happened with the mother tree, he didn't come down with everybody else, is what I will say. So everybody else forgot him. But he was there. What exactly he did and what he is doing is going to be a bit of a secret for now. But Sobato is one. It's one of those characters. Like, I'm like, okay, who is this person? He's probably from Care. Okay. He has his tongue ripped out. Okay, I've already kind of written the thing about them being isolationists. This is so that he can't give away information. So him talking to them is sort of a could look further into that if you'd like. Nobody has, and they have bigger things on their mind, and that's completely fine. he's this forgettable character where nobody kind of realizes where he went. Okay, let's make him stealthy. Let's make that make sense. Let's make him very stealthy. And that's kind of what his deal is. He's not so much a negotiator as an observer. So yeah, it's always fun to make mistakes in D&D because you can recover them in ways that make the story better. That's what I'll say about that. The last thing I want to talk about, I'm going a little bit over, which is not what I thought was going to happen this time around. Again, I keep reiterating this. It's so much easier to talk for half an hour than it seems when you're thinking about it. Last thing I wanted to talk about is preparing for episode 11. So this might be a longer episode because I've got a little bit to say about that. Preparing for episode 11 has been uniquely easy in a way. It's been difficult in that I've just had to like front load a little bit of my world building because there are places they have access to that they would not have had access to had Ulden not been part of the story. And so it did not occur to me that naturally his old workshop would be connected with teleportation circles to the rest of them. I thought if they're going to get in on the teleportation circles, they're going to have to go to somewhere like Wardell Glaucus or one of the other Wardell Islands, or to a city like they're going to have to go to Skarsgård or Balmoral or to Rix. There are a few other cities that are connected with the teleportation circles. So it was my thought, and there's an encounter to be had before they can get through to one of those teleportation circles, if that makes sense. So the big curveball in episode 10 was the discovery that they could. I don't think the cameras were rolling. This was here's the story. Just after we finished, and everybody hung up the call in the group chat, Mark messaged and said, "I just realized Ulden has an old workshop," and this is something we talked about as part of the character work for Ulden. He's got an old workshop on Wardell Hana. And I'm like, oh, crap. So they just have access to all of these different places, which means that they have everything they need. They have the artifact to free Pelor. They have the ability to create a magic circle that summons the armies from Garandia, or from Sygalia as a whole, because there are going to be support armies coming in from the other kingdoms as well. Those are very, very powerful tools to have. And especially for level 7 characters, they can do a lot at level 7. Never let it be underestimated how much D&D is played at those first 3-4 levels. It's always good to get beyond those to level 7 through 12, I think, is where a lot of the meat of this game is. Anyway, that's just a little aside. So level 7 characters can do a lot. They have very powerful NPC allies, as has been established that Dust and Alistair can do a lot of work, even on their own. Not to mention Lucarian, Aegeus. There's some stuff they can get done. So they are loaded up with very, very powerful options in terms of what they are going to do next. I had prepared after episode 8. I prepared what the enemy's next moves were going to be, because the enemies in God Heist and going forward into future seasons, is something that I am very avid about in terms of my stories, is that the enemies are proactive. The heroes are proactive and the enemies are proactive. And there's a bit of reacting from both sides that has to happen. When the enemies captured them in Wardell Car, they made a plan. They created Thano as a sleeper agent using special magics. They whatever the rings were made and picked up. Um, the rings which have various monitoring abilities for them to use. And these are very proactive plans that are in place. Now, there is an overarching plan. There is no way that they could piece this together, but the pieces have been set in this case. I mean, there's no way you could piece it together. After episode 10, they could piece together what the enemy plan is. I would be impressed if they did. The enemy's plan has been in place since the beginning of this thing. I came up with the main antagonists and what their various shticks were going to be and what they were planning on doing before we started playing. And that's something that hasn't been revealed yet. And as a counter, as their proactive move after learning that the heroes have got the orb, the bad guys have made a move. They've proactively taken steps. So that has been in place for weeks. In the case of the main plan, months. In the case of the more immediate plan, in response to the heroes getting this orb, which the bad guys did not know they were going to get, they've come up with a plan that has been in place for weeks. Now, I set up that scenario ready for level 7 characters because I thought that there might be a combat encounter with the tree. But I thought it was more important. They role played it well enough that the tree wasn't going to be antagonized by them, especially. It was just passive things like Bessie showing up, and the tree did not have the expected response to Bessie showing up. But they role played it well enough that the tree didn't get pissed at them, basically. And I thought it was more important to get some lore down and get them ready to go into this big fight with the people they actually wanted to fight. They've been talking about wanting to kill Hanuma for a while now. So, sometimes give the players what they want. Right. So that plan has been in place. It's been in place. I'm ready for level 7 characters to go into this situation, right? The thing I wasn't, you call this is silly, you gave it to them. And of course I did. But they started talking about summoning armies in the middle of floating islands. And for whatever reason, that just hadn't occurred to me. It hadn't, perhaps it was the fact that I got thrown by the fact that they could do it immediately. That might be it, because of Olden's thing, where Olden, again, can just access the teleportation circle network just by virtue of being who he is. And so they can do it now. I think I was planning on them having something to do before. Doesn't matter. Getting access, and it doesn't matter. So that's been in place. And now that they have these tools, those things that are in place don't take into account everything that they have. Right? It doesn't take into account the fact that they can bypass the barrier that keeps the Sygalians away. So what the enemies have done is very competent for the information that they have. And if the heroes do unexpected things, the enemies will be taken by surprise. And so this is what I'm saying is the major insight of this episode. In terms of potential spoilers. And this is something I will reiterate tomorrow to the players when we start. If you're only getting this a day early, it is possible. I have determined that it is possible, depending on the decisions of where they go, what they do. It is possible for the heroes to completely foil the plans of the main plans of the bad guys tomorrow. It is possible for them to wreck shop so spectacularly that the bad guys' plans will not be able to happen. And there will be incredible fallout. There always is. There are always complications, which is part of the reason that makes a political uh, a political story like this one, well, that has a political element rather, as interesting as it is. But but in terms of big final boss stuff, that will look very different. It will. This is the way I was explaining it earlier to. I was bouncing ideas off of my sister, um, who is great at listening to all the shenanigans that I'm cooking up. Um, Even though she does not play D&D and it is not quite her wheelhouse. Shout out to Lily. It's the idea that the power at the moment has been that the Grey Orthodoxy have had power, and the heroes have been this renegade group that have been traveling around trying to mess with their plans. Destroying this plan. Hello, Grant Klopp. Very nice to have you join the live stream. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions that you want to send, we're getting kind of nearer to the end now, but I've got time. Throw a question my way, Grant. Appreciate that. If this plan gets womped as severely as it is possible for the plan to be womped, now I'm not saying I expect this to happen, but it is possible. And the last time I didn't expect something to happen, they got captured by the Grey Orthodoxy, and one of them got killed in prison. So, there's that. One of the best things that ever happened to the show, I think. Fantastic. If this happens, the Sygalians with their armies coming through will suddenly be the people with power, and the Vulpicarians. Not only will the lies that the Vulpicarians have been spreading about them suddenly become truths, that they are invaders, that they are evil, that they want to destroy their way of life, but they'll become the renegades, and the heroes will become the people with power hunting down dissidents, basically, and able to reap the rewards of a successful mission. It's a possibility which, frankly, is very exciting. Now, again, plans are in place. The bad guys have put plans in place, and if the heroes work in a way which is predictable to the bad guys, things can go very, very badly for them. That's all I'm going to say about that. There is a high potential for. I didn't. Excuse me. I didn't hold back on the resources the bad guys were willing to use in order to kill the heroes. So, that said, thanks very much for watching. Anybody who's watching after the fact, get in the comments. I will see your questions and I will address them next week on the next episode of Roll Insight. This has been great. It's been great to talk about this stuff. You got a motherload of background information this time around. I hope that you treat it responsibly, and I'm very much looking forward to the next episode, and I hope that you are too. Signing out. Black Lives Matter. Justice for Regis Korchinski-Paquette. Huge shout out to the NHS and all medical practitioners in the world right now who are having to work so hard to deal with, frankly, the mess that the politicians have left you in. You have my. I just wish there was more I could do. If you can donate to any of these things, please do so. Please stay safe out there. As much as you can as things reopen and continue to reopen. Yeah, that's that's the note. The note I want to end on is that it's been a blast with all the stuff that's going on in the world. It has been so wonderful to discover this group of people and start this project I have so much pride in and so much faith that we're going to stick the landing on with. Um, I'm very grateful to everybody at in the team at Hidden Realms for everything that's happened. So there. Um, thanks very much, and we'll see you next time. Peace.